Chapter 10, Lesson 2, Unbiased and Biased Samples. You will be able to determine whether sample methods are valid. To get valid results, a sample must be chosen very carefully. An unbiased sample is selected so that it accurately represents the entire population. Two ways to pick an unbiased sample are listed below. So you have simple random sample and systematic random sample. With simple random sample, each item or person in the population is as likely to be chosen as any other. One example of this is you can put, students' names on a piece of paper, put them in a hat or a bowl, and pick them out without looking. It's very random, it's simple, not complicated. Okay, you can draw straws that have names or numbers on them. Okay, anything that's simple, random, pull it out of a hat. Systematic random sampling are the items or people are selected according to a specific time or item interval. So for example, every 20th person is chosen from an alphabetic list of students attending a school. You could survey maybe every 5th person that walks into the school building, or every 12th person that walks into a movie theater. It's systematic. You're asking every so many people. And both of these types of unbiased samplings are valid. So these are valid methods to sample a population. In a biased sample, one or more parts of the population are favored over others. Two ways to pick a biased sample are listed below. A convenient sample. It consists of members of a population that are easily accessed. So if I want to know what the 7th grade likes to do on their spare time, but I only ask the students that happen to be in front of me at that moment, that's a convenient sample. It's convenient. Okay, to represent all students attending a school, the principal surveys the students in one math class. That's convenient. He went to one room, or she went to one room, asked those people, and called it a day. That's convenience, and that is considered biased. A voluntary response sample. It involves only those who want to participate. So if ever you're asking for volunteers or radio listeners to call in, that's voluntary. Another example would be students at a school who wish to express their opinions complete an online survey. It's voluntary. So only the people that want to participate are participating, therefore it is biased. And these are all invalid. A random sample of students at a middle school shows that 10 students prefer listening to rock, 15 students prefer listening to hip-hop, and 25 students prefer no music while they exercise. It can be concluded that half the students prefer no music while they exercise. Determine whether the conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. So here we have a simple random sample. I know that because it said random sample and it didn't have any other restrictions. So a simple random sample, which means it is unbiased, which means it is valid. So it's a good way to sample a population. The customers of a music store are surveyed to determine their favorite leisure time activity. The results are shown in the graph. The store manager concludes that most people prefer to listen to the music on their leisure time. Determine whether the conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. Okay, so you're talking to customers in a music store, and you want to know their favorite leisure time activity. That right there, I can tell you, is a convenience sample. They are conveniently asking the people in the music store. It's also biased because if you're asking people in a music store what they like to do on their spare time, most of them probably enjoy listening to music. Thus the reason they're in the music store. So this is a convenient sample. So convenient sampling that is biased, which means it is not valid. You can also say invalid. Every 10th person who walks into a department store is surveyed to determine his or her music preference. Out of 150 customers, 70 stated that they prefer rock music. The manager concludes that about half of all customers prefer rock music. Determine whether the conclusion is valid. Justify your answer. So the key here is every 10th person. So this would be a systematic, random sampling. Which means it is unbiased. And it means it is valid. The conclusion is valid. A radio station asks its listeners to indicate their preference for one of two candidates in an upcoming election. 72% of the listeners who responded preferred candidate A. So the radio station announced that candidate A would win the election. Is this conclusion valid? Justify your answer. Okay. So it's a radio station asking listeners to indicate their preference. They're asking people to call in. This is a voluntary response, sampling. Which means it is biased, which means it's invalid or not valid. A valid sampling method uses unbiased samples. If a sampling method is valid, you can make generalizations about the population. A store sells 3 types of pants: jeans, capris, and cargos. The store workers survey 50 customers at random about their favorite type of pants. The survey responses are indicated below. If 450 pairs of pants are ordered, how many should be jeans? First of all, I know it's a random sampling, which means it is valid. So this is simple random. Which means it's unbiased, which means it's valid. Because I know it's a valid method, I can now use the prediction that we learned in the previous lesson, or use the method to find predictions we learned in the previous lesson. So we are concerned with jeans. There are 25 jeans out of 50 people. I'm going to go ahead and reduce that so I have easier numbers to work with. And I get 1/2. So to make a prediction, we're going to take that probability of 1/2 and set it up in a proportion. 450 is the total. X in the numerator. Cross multiply. 2x equals 450. Divide by 2. We get x equals 225. So 225 jeans is what they should order. Zach is trying to decide which of 3 golf courses is the best. He randomly surveyed people at a sports store and recorded the results in a table. Suppose Zach surveyed 150 more people. How many people would be expected to vote for Rolling Meadows? Okay, so he's asking people in a sports store, which is okay. He wants to know specifically which golf course is the best. So he's not asking just golf players, but he's asking anybody in the sports store. Okay, and he's also not asking people at a specific place. So if he were to ask people at Whispering Trail what course they liked best, of course they're going to say Whispering Trail. But he's being Very random. He's doing a simple random sampling. Which is unbiased. And therefore valid. So let's take a look here. We have rolling meadows, which is 7 out of, add those up, we get 25. It's already reduced, so let's just set up our proportion. He wants to know 150 more people. So 150 in the denominator, x up top, cross multiply, 25x equals 150 times 7 is 1050. Divide by 25. And we get 42. And it is people.